I've specifically been recording for 3 minutes now, saying it out loud so I can find it later.
Yeah. But if you say it now, 3 minutes in...
You should say it then, I guess.
Yeah. You are at 3 minutes.
Okay.
As the crow flies.
I was very bad at taking notes for this because I just liked this movie.
Because I just watched it, same. I had the same problem, but I just watched it now, so it's a little more fresh in the brain.
Alright. Welcome to Direct-to-Video. VHS? A podcast where we pair... Excuse me?
Sorry, we did not time.is.
Fuck me. Oh, man. Yeah, we super didn't. Super didn't. Welcome to Direct-to-Video. VHS?
VHS?
A podcast where we pair movies like fine wine. I am your host, Tony Robusto.
I am your host, Andy Reyes.
Third time's a charm. We did it.
We're here.
This time we watched Detective Pikachu.
We did.
We did, and I had fun with it.
Yeah. It was good. It was good.
It's weird. It's a weird energy when we watch a movie that we like.
I felt myself remembering watching it in the theater and being like, I'm still surprised at how not awful that movie is.
There is a part of you that expects it to be, right?
Every time.
When you're talking about, like, Pokemon movies, we just watched Pokemon, the first movie. Parts of it were surprisingly competent, and parts of it were even more surprisingly terrible.
It was a movie that was kind of caught between two different like philosophies for what a kids movie should be, and also just not very good.
Even at its best, if you were going to watch like the subbed version, it was basically like a Godzilla movie. Like a classic Godzilla movie where there is a lesson behind the fact that Godzilla attacked, and it's like really campy, but fine, you know? And this did not have that energy almost at all.
Honestly, this just felt like a really good like young adult kids adventure, which is what it should feel like.
A little noir-y, which was fun. I like when people take Pokemon and do stuff with it that you're not supposed to. I like Pokemon as a noir. That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my favorite Pokemon game growing up was the Emerald or Ruby or Sapphire, whichever one you played, because...
Well, Emerald's the best version of them, because it doesn't have a part where they're like, no, this other evil team's definitely the good guys.
Yes, but also I like all three of those games because the plot of the game is we are destroying the world for Pokemon. The stakes are so high for a Pokemon game.
Well, Diamond and Pearl, the stakes are the end of the universe, I think.
That's too big, though, right? Like, I don't know. I can't...
It's massively too big. The game in that one, the gang is just a cult. It's a cult who wants to destroy the world, and that's too weird.
And I was watching May play the recent one, and in the recent one, there's like no villain really. It's just like a kind of slightly over obsessed fanboys.
Are we talking about Sword and Shield?
Yes, that's the I guess two more have come out since then.
Yeah, you gotta be careful when you say the most recent Pokemon game. Because for a second I thought you might be talking about the remake of Sapphire and Ruby, which are probably exactly the same. But you meant, yeah, the one where at the end this fucking low-rent Tony Stark is like, I need to solve the renewable energy crisis that is for some reason already solved in this world. He's like, in 10,000 years our cities will fall.
That's so long.
Man, that's a good fucking run, dude.
Dude, I wish I had a runway that long. Are you kidding me? If I had if we had 10,000 years as opposed to any second now. Where scientists are just looking at the clock like, I don't know, man.
We gotta go out and plant some trees. What are we doing?
It's bad. It's bad. Honestly, it should have happened already. We're like just right in that edge.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. It was very weird. The story of that one's very weird in the modern climate of there is an ongoing human-created natural disaster around energy, and this is functionally not dealing with it.
No, it's and I think it was, even at the time, it was weird, right? That was
a couple years ago. It was weird. Yeah. That's very weird. Also, they made Pokemon Soccer in that, and that was weird. The whole thing's weird.
I'm actually kind of okay with Pokemon just being soccer, because it makes it feel more like we're playing pretend and less like dog fighting, which is the eternal battle that Pokemon has had since inception. Sure.
Without getting too much into it, I didn't like that it meant that the champion was just like a random poster boy who's literally covered in ads. And this is one of the ones where you got to choose your own clothing, but oops, you can't wear your own clothing while you're in the fights because you're on a soccer team.
Because you're on a soccer team and you have to wear your uniform.
Your jersey, even though you're not on a team, it's just you. There were a lot of choices made in that game. I thought that game was weird.
I think a lot of people were very frustrated with it. I haven't played Arceus, but it seems like that's going to be the direction Pokemon games are going to be in from now on, from the trailer of the new one. Welcome to Video Game News Corner, I guess.
I was gonna say, we are not talking about the movie. I might cut all this out, put it at the end.
Yeah. Let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about Detective Pikachu 2019.
So, let's talk, even before the movie. I do want to mention something, because I think it might be my first note. Yeah. What do you think of the designs of the Pokemon in this movie?
I like them. Ideally, what I would have wanted them to do. I would prefer they Roger Rabbit it, if they could have.
Interesting.
But I also understand that is like a uniquely only I personally would have enjoyed that. I think a lot of people would have felt like that would have been cheap.
I think the issue with Roger Rabbiting it is that it wouldn't feel like a Pokemon world.
Yeah.
This is a world where there are no animals.
Yes.
There are just Pokemon. Instead of seeing buffalo, we see buffalons? I forget what they're called. It doesn't matter. In the beginning of the movie, actually not the very beginning, like just after the opening scene, there are Pidgey flying by, and my first thought was, man, those birds look weird. And it clicked. Those aren't birds, those are Pokemon. That's why they look so weird. All of the Pokemon look weird. And actually, yes. I'm into it. I'm into the idea that, like, I think that this movie will age much better than other CGI-based movies, because even as CGI evolves, it won't matter because the Pokemon always looked weird.
It already has, right? Like, this movie came out 3 years ago, and, like, I don't know, I just watched a Marvel movie. I don't remember which one.
That tells you something about the current state of Marvel movies, huh?
Doctor Strange. I watched the new Doctor Strange, and it was a miserable time. I hated it for a variety of reasons. But the CGI in kind of the more recent run of Marvel movies feels bad. It doesn't look good. And and like, even going back to like some of the earlier ones, there's just something about it. It's because those movies are trying to look as realistic as possible, and so when people move in them, sometimes it just doesn't flow. And that would have been a big problem if this movie decided that they were going to we are going to try and make these Pokemon look as close to real animals as possible, because that was the other option, right?
Right, but instead they just made him look weird. There's a Mr. Mime in this movie who looks too much like a human, and it's disgusting.
It's disgusting, but it works.
But it works! Like, absolutely. We're about to see Mewtwo, because in the opening scene, You
the
are
first thing you
immediately
see.
told, this is Mewtwo. Mewtwo's here.
This is what Mewtwo looks like, and it's honestly a fantastic primer for getting your brain. If you know what Pokemon are, it automatically your brain adjusts to, okay, this is what they're going to look like. I'm in.
Right. They don't look like anime characters. This thing looks like an alien. It looks not unlike
like a genetically modified abomination.
Yes, precisely.
They had to redesign the Pokemon in this movie because they did test shots with, I think, like hyper realistic versions, and the Pokemon Company wasn't happy with it.
Oh man, I'm so glad that didn't get into a trailer before they decided to change it, like Sonic.
I think the designs leaked. And yeah, like reception was poor to negative, right? Mm-hmm. And so they actually reached out, and if you are a person who liked Pokemon and were on the internet at all in the early 2000s, you remember that there was a guy on DeviantArt who like made his name drawing realistic Pokemon. They got that guy as a consultant because they knew that his designs already went over well, right? Like his designs already passed the fan test.
Right, people liked him.
So, and they didn't use those designs directly because I think those designs are still a little too hewing too close to reality. But I think by bringing him on, they were able to pick his brain about like what decisions he made to kind of allow the Pokemon to retain their original proportions and designs and be recognizable while using realistic textures. Because the last thing you want is the like Super Smash Brothers effect, where it's just like Mario, but with real jeans.
He does wear real jeans in Super Smash Brothers. There's so much. The denim is so high quality.
It's so like, realistic. Why? I should not be able to see the individual follicles of Mario's hair, and yet I can.
Yet.
So this is pretty familiar territory. Mewtwo breaks out of a lab.
Yep, it's sort of his thing. Hey, have you heard of Mewtwo? Have you heard the good news?
Have you heard the good news? My guy needs to stop getting put in labs. Like
it's happened at least twice. They say in this movie, and I was going to say this later, but here we go. They say in this movie that he broke out of a lab 20 years ago in Kanto.
Which means that this movie canonically takes place at least 10 years after Ash Ketchum's adventures.
I mean, you say canonically. I think it was just a wink nudge to the fact that 20 years before this, the game
this movie, yeah.
But yes, there is definitely a bit there that's like, wait, so what does that mean for this character?
It means that the red XP at the beginning in the battle scene that you see that is kind of mimicking the intro to the original Game Boy game could just be 21-year-old Red or Ash, depending on your preference. How do you feel about our main character, Tim Goodman?
Mewtwo? Oh.
Yes, our main character, Mewtwo.
I will tell you what I like about Tim. He is maybe he's the perfect protagonist for this movie. Mm-hmm. I have, like, minor issues with him as a character. Like, oh, why did he make this decision? Whatever. But that's fine. That's just, like, movie stuff. The reason he's a great protagonist is we need to know in this movie that when people catch a Pokemon in this world, they are catching one Pokemon. It is their partner. They, like, together with this Pokemon, basically go about their normal lives and do their normal jobs.
It's like a world where everyone has a therapy dog.
Yes, pretty much.
Which sounds amazing.
Yeah, you know what? Except your therapy dogs can shoot fire if you want. So that's why he's great, because he doesn't have a Pokemon. So his friend tells him that he's been scoping out this Cubone for him. Cubone, if you don't know, is called the lonely Pokemon. I take issue with the idea that every Cubone is wearing its mother's skull, because that's just not tenable in the long term, but that is the lore. And it's always crying because it misses its mom, because sure.
Well, there's no such thing as mommy issues with mommy.
And so Tim goes to catch this Cubone, and this Cubone wrecks his shit. That's great. I enjoy him getting absolutely destroyed.
Which also sets the tone for what the violence of this is going to be, which is also good. There are some things that happen later that, had the stakes not been established here early on, I'd be like, that person's dead. But because we're in like a semi-Looney Tune world, I'm like, oh, that guy's probably fine.
There are some people that are definitely dead, but they refuse to say it.
No, they're fine. They're fine.
There's a scientist, okay? There's a scientist. Yes. She's dead, right?
Okay, yeah, she's dead. She's definitely dead.
She's like super, super defo dead, and like nobody's saying anything about it.
Yeah, unless Mewtwo psychically made all of that glass miss her. She went through. We saw what happened to the door of that facility. Like, that woman is a shadow on the ground.
If I was Mewtwo, I would not go to the trouble of making all of the glass miss her.
No. In fact, I would probably make all of it hit her on purpose.
Yeah, why not?
like, actually, how dare you?
Who's gonna convict me?
There's no crime. There's no legal system in Pokemon, but there are cops.
There are cops. My favorite thing about this movie, actually, is that, spoiler, Pikachu's a cop. However, Pikachu hates cops.
Yes.
Pikachu, like, multiple times talks about, like, not going to the cops because, like, they won't understand or they can't help and all this stuff. And it's like, Pikachu does not trust, like, the actual institutions that he is working for.
I have to imagine that that's just a result of, like, watching all of those old detective movies. Like, listen, I've seen movies. You can't trust cops. So,
out of curiosity, do you think that Pikachu, the character as a Pikachu, was watching those movies alone in that apartment? Because the TV was on.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a step back. That's 20 minutes into the movie already.
Yeah, Tim Goodman doesn't have a Pokemon. And I think one of the other good things about his character is that it feels like him not having a Pokemon has kind of unstuck him from society. Like, he is an outsider because of this, and he refuses to acknowledge it.
Speaking of which, can I bring up another person who may or may not be dead, but they're certainly not saying?
Mm-hmm.
His grandmother is maybe dead. We only see her in flashbacks.
I think the implication is that his grandmother has also passed away and that he's just there by himself.
Right, because the reason his friend wants him to catch a Pokemon is because he's leaving. And he's like his last friend from college still in town.
Well, and his friend mentions that no one else he knows is in town, and I think the implication is like, you have nothing keeping you here. Why are you still here?
Right. And his friend just wants him to have like something. Just like, have a therapy dog, right? But he doesn't catch the Cubone, and so it's just him alone working at this insurance company. I have no problem with people who work at insurance companies. I'm sure if that's your whole thing, you are a pretty sad person. Because I imagine it's mostly moving data around.
You can't be friends with spreadsheets, though.
What if you have a Porygon?
Okay, well, maybe you can be friends with spreadsheets then. But he doesn't have one either, so...
No, they're not in this movie.
I think it's good to establish that this is... that the act... I don't know how to say this, right? But, like, I think everybody... Or maybe not everybody. Maybe I'm just showing my whole ass here. I think but I feel like everybody feels like they've missed something in society. Okay,
so not only is this probably true in general, but specifically it would be true about this generation who just spent 2 years inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I will go back and watch a movie and think, wow, this feels prescient just because I spent like an entire year and a half indoors.
Especially as a teenager. I think teenagers especially have this feeling of, like, I missed the how to be a human class in school, and everybody knows that I missed it. And I think the great thing about having a main character in this film be somebody who has like a tangible reason why they are kind of unable to move forward with their life is it makes him not only relatable, but also makes you want to root for him, because you want him to find that tangible thing and to be able to live a life and not feel like you're stuck because you missed a choice.
Because he is defined by one choice.
Yeah, and the whole movie is defined by him being stuck there until the middle of the movie, when the movie changes gears and Tim stops being our main character.
Right. He gets a phone call. His dad's dead. Oops.
His dad is dead. Oh, no.
He gets on this train. The train, the only important thing about the train is it has... Actually, there is a lickitung who licks him, and that's kind of important because it's nasty.
It's also... This is genuinely a very important thing, but I'll let you get to your point.
He's watching... It's like an introductory video to the city he's going to, which is like built around the concept of coexisting with Pokemon. It's kind of, if you ask me, like, what fictional city would I want to live in, this is actually really up there, because it has this idea, an idea that feels very Japanese, actually, of, like, building skyscrapers and having cars and still managing to coexist with nature.
Ecofuturism.
Yes, precisely. The other important thing is that Pokemon battles are not allowed here. I think that's all of it. We're also kind of introduced to the two... I don't know if they're antagonists or just, like, big names in this movie, I guess.
To Bill Nighy, who plays...
The science guy?
No, not Bill Nye. Bill Nighy.
It's going to be the first and last time I say that. Go on.
God damn it. We're introduced to the Clifford father and son duo.
The son's the CEO, and the father is the retired CEO who built the city apparently from nothing.
Yeah, it's his legacy. He's the lone visionary. The Tony Stark, if you will. I think he's infinitely more interesting because he does something really weird in this movie that we're gonna get to.
Well, whenever Tony Stark gets too interesting, he becomes a villain. There's a fine line between Tony Stark and
Dr. Doom. Dr.
Doom. Thank God I could not think of his name. But it's precisely what I was going to say.
Yeah, I knew exactly what you meant. Yeah. And the line is magic. I want to talk about the lickitung, because I do think that the lickitung scene is very important. Because too often in modern movies, which are primarily juxtapose CGI characters with live actors, they don't get to touch each other. It is a phenomenally huge problem in especially like some of the newer Star Wars stuff and in some of the newer Marvel movies.
Lickitung gets to actually lick him. There's interaction here.
It licks him. It licks him for real. It touches him. There's saliva on his face, and
there's a lot of saliva.
There are constant moments in this movie where people are touching Pokemon and Pokemon are touching them back. And I wish I'd have said that better. But it matters because it means that even though these Pokemon look like weird little freaks, they feel more real.
They have like a physicality.
Because there's a tangibility to them.
Yes, to bring back Star Wars for half a second, it's like the Grogu Muppet or the Yoda Muppet, and then in the prequels they didn't actually use the Muppet, and that's why it felt weird. It's better when something is physically there and you can like see it and touch it. Even if the CGI is so good that we don't see the difference, really, we know there's a difference.
A great example is, this is the big one for me, was Avengers Endgame, where they were constantly talking about how, like, oh, these suits that we made for them aren't real. They're all CGI. And immediately my brain was like, that's why that whole movie felt weird, because there was never a moment in that movie where somebody unzipped or adjusted themselves. And people touch themselves a lot. But when you're told you can't touch your neckline, there has to be a better way of saying this, right? But like,
making that my ringtone.
We're tactile creatures. And, you know, if your shirt is uncomfortable, you adjust it by pulling on the collar. But when you're told you can't touch your neckline because it's going to interfere with our ability to like properly physics this suit that we're building on top of you, then all you can do to adjust yourself is like roll your shoulders. And once you notice that, you notice it the entire time. They're never touching anything. Anything that isn't specifically made for them to touch, they're not touching it. And it's weird. It feels alien. It feels like, it doesn't feel like you're watching people in a space doing things. It feels like you're watching actors on a stage trying not to touch boxes. It completely like readjusts the performances, and it also ruins your ability to like tangibly believe that anything is happening. But in this Pokemon movie where all the Pokemon look like little freaks, and the CGI is genuinely not that good, it's more believable because they're like, you know, interacting with each other and like pushing on things, and the world breathes and breaks and changes and shifts in ways that aren't real but feel more real.
How do you think they got the Lickitung lick?
I think they had a guy with a wet pad in a green suit just walk up to him and just start rubbing his hand up his cheek.
Wonderful. I love it.
And a large part of why it works is a testament to these actors, right? Like, every single one of them is, like, hitting those beats very well. So, Tim goes to Rhyme City, that's what it's called, and he has an incredibly awkward conversation with Ken Watanabe that I love.
I felt so awkward just sitting there watching it. This guy was basically like, you know, your dad really cared about you. He's like, I'm gonna leave.
I don't know you, and I don't know him.
Right.
Like, I love that conversation so much because it feels like real conversations I've had before.
It's weird. It's like that kind of thing where, like, you know, if you know, and we're probably too young to really see this a lot, but if you know somebody and they have a kid, you kind of feel like you by proxy know their kid, so you can kind of see what this captain's going through, where he's like trying to connect with this kid that he doesn't know through his dad and his like probable grief there, right? Except he's not exactly grieving. That's not like the right word for it.
He's cutting and running is what I think the closest thing I can say.
It's like he lost his dad like 20 years ago and never dealt with it. Because his dad was still around. And now his dad's not around, and now he has to deal with it. And there's no like structure there for him to do that with anymore.
So he makes his way back to his dad's apartment, and that's when we're introduced to Detective Pikachu, who's got a little hat.
He does have a little hat.
I love that this little hat is the aesthetic choice of the actual Pikachu. It's his hat. And I also love that everyone is like, why the fuck does he have a hat? That's weird. It's weird that he has a hat. He's like a little human.
Well, I'll tell you what. There actually is something that Chamie pointed out that I have to agree with on a certain level. The Pokemon should have names.
Yeah.
If you don't really know Pokemon that well, it is easier for people to be referring to them as Pikachu or Psyduck or Aipom, which is about to show up. But they should have names because everybody calls this Pikachu Harry's Pikachu, and it's not that useful, and it sounds weird after a while. Or they say to Tim, they're like, your Pikachu partner, and it's like, that can't be the way to say this, right? This is too much.
I have to imagine that there was a lot of arguments over whether or not to have nicknames for the Pokemon. I don't know what the right answer is, though. I definitely think it's weird, but I also think you do run the risk of people just going, my favorite Pokemon is Eric.
That's the issue, right?
It's a problem that really only exists because Pokemon is such a big brand, and you don't want any of that brand to be obfuscated.
So Harry finds this juice.
A tube of R. It's labeled R, which is a fun little Easter egg.
Yes. It's on his dad's desk. and he pops it open, and it must be under immense pressure. Because so much purple mist comes shooting out of this stuff. And he's like coughing up, and he opens a window, and he shoots it all out into the air outside. And then it drives mad a group of apalm, which are monkeys, but at the end of their tails they have another hand. This
is the scariest scene of the movie.
It is very intense. It's like a horror action movie scene. It's like being chased, and I'm annoyed at myself that I said horror action movie and then this was the only thing I could think of. It's like being chased by gremlins. Gremlins are a joke horror monster, but still. Something small, but could, totally kick your ass if it got a hold of you.
They're chased by the apalm out onto the street. I don't like that Ryan Reynolds can only play one character now, and that character is just Deadpool. I find it very frustrating. This is possibly the best use of that.
It's sort of like Eddie Murphy as Mushu, where you're like, this actor and his characters can be kind of a lot. But when put into an adorable little animated body, that works.
Yeah, and I remember when it was announced that Ryan Reynolds was going to be the voice of Detective Pikachu, I was a little abrasive because I was already tired of it. But I think he does a good job. I think he tones it down a lot for this role because it's a kids movie, so he doesn't he's not saying bad words, which is nice. 2, I also think he's just less. He's not an asshole. Pikachu is very earnest and wants to help and wants to do good things. And it's such a nice reprieve to have a character that just wants to, change the world and solve crimes.
Right. He is sarcastic and sardonic and ridiculous, but his goals are nice goals, which is a shift from, for instance, Deadpool, who is just an asshole.
Yeah. I also think that the bounce back between Justice Smith and Ryan Reynolds in these scenes is fantastic. Mm-hmm. They have a really good chemistry.
It's actually kind of weird that it works. I mean, you were just talking about, physicality. I don't know if Ryan Reynolds was in the room for any of this,
Yeah.
Or if this is just a well-directed movie. I don't know how you get good reactions to somebody who's not there.
I'm genuinely curious. I didn't have time, because it's been very busy lately, to do any, hard research into how this movie was made. I would be genuinely very shocked if Ryan Reynolds wasn't at least in the room with him for rehearsals and shooting so that they kind of knew what they wanted out of him, out of Justice Smith. If that is just him acting to nothing, that is fucking impressive. And he deserves a commendation for it because you couldn't tell at all. He doesn't slip up once. And neither does, I wish I noted her name, but I didn't because the credits were going by too quickly. Catherine Newton also does a fantastic job. Although I think it's a lot easier. She mostly interacts with her Psyduck.
And Psyduck's just a Psyduck.
Yeah, it's just a Psyduck. It's not talking back to her. So I can imagine them just having a big old plush for her to just move around and have on her back and stuff. But I'm still impressed by Justice Smith's performance because it's so hard. And if you haven't seen the behind the scenes of how they made Star Wars Episode 2, it's really hard apparently for actors to act when it's just them. When it's just them and no one else is in the room.
So that's true, but it's also more normal now. The big thing about stuff about Star Wars Episode 2 is it was kind of the first time that had been tried. But since then, we've had a lot of movies. I mean, you're talking about the Marvel movies, or the Transformers movies. Not that I'd say that everybody in those is doing a great job, but there are a lot of movies. There are a lot of movies where somebody has to act across from somebody who isn't really there.
Yeah.
Or they have to react to a thing that's not really happening.
I definitely think so, but I still don't think it's the norm. I still don't, and also I don't think it's a thing that you're trained for, right? Even though it is standard now, I don't think any actor like looks forward to it. And also it's not what you want to be doing as an actor, right? Like famously during the making of the Hobbit films, Ian McKellen had a really hard time because it was so against what he was trained to be as an actor, as a stage actor and a Shakespearean actor, that to act to lights, right? Like it was unnatural for him, and he was very frustrated with the entire process. And I think even if it happens more often, the fact that we're pushing so hard to move away from green screen, especially with these newer Star Wars shows where they have that big weird like sound stage that they're using now, tells me that it will never become the norm, because I think at the end of the day, what actors want is to react to people.
There should be that physicality, right? There should be, you can reach out and touch the background or the person you are playing against or something. But for whatever reason, it's working in this movie.
And I think a big part of it is because this movie has sets.
That could be it. I mean, there is a real physicality to this world. Like, he runs out of an alley to a fucking...
Oh, yeah, to the market. It's like a...
It's almost like a street fair. It's such a big, bustling market.
And there's so many Pokemon there, and it's, like, genuinely mind-blowing how... I think every frame of this movie, there is always a Pokemon for you to look at.
I had a minute where I stopped and laughed, because I just realized it was somebody's job to figure out which Pokemon are going to be in what scene. And there's always a Pokemon in a scene.
Somebody had a list of 800 fake animals and had to cross them off.
So there are the obvious ones, right? Which, like, later we're going to get into Charizard. Charizard was written in.
Yeah.
And Gyarados was written in. The big ones were written in. But somebody had to be like, I think the captain has a Snubble.
Even like a less serious like decision, right? Like, because there are things that had to have been written in the script, right? Like he's going to be chased by Apom. This is the Torterra Garden. The captain has a Snubble. These are all things that
Torterra Garden's gorgeous. I love that.
Right. It's so good. It's such a good moment. But they're even harder than that, right? It's like, okay, we filmed the movie. We have all the main Pokemon roughed in. Now we have to replace all of these other things. We have to put Pokemon everywhere else, and that's it. That has to be like endless arguments behind closed doors of people, one, wanting their favorite Pokemon in there.
Or wanting, like, weird shit. There's a Lucario who serves drinks. Lucario,
stuff like that.
If I was listing, like, best Pokemon to serve drinks, he wouldn't be in the top 100.
He has hands.
It's a weird little creep. Lucario makes sense, especially if you have, like, an island-themed place. But it was just so weird to see a Lucario because they are, like, one of the weirder Pokemon. One of the weirder-looking Pokemon.
Are you sure you mean Lucario?
No. Shit.
Because I just realized who you were talking about. And I don't think they're Lucario.
Oh my god, I keep saying Lucario, that's the stupid punchy one.
Yeah, that's the Smash Bros. One.
Yeah, that's the Smash Bros. One. God, this is gonna be... Here, I can figure this out.
Oh my god.
Ludi... Okay, I don't even feel bad about this. Its name is Ludicolo.
That's it, Ludicolo. That is a weird choice, for sure.
Because he's just this weird, like... honestly, if you look at the anime version, kind of looks like a Muppet. One of the Muppets that, like, there's a human in there, a full-size human.
And they did make it look like that, too, which is very good.
Yeah, and I know I said it before, but one of the things I genuinely love about this movie is how they will not shy away from having Pokemon be very off-putting and weird. Pikachu orders a drink from this Ludicolo. He goes, and drinks him a drink. It's ridiculous.
I mean, there's a moment in this movie where we get to see a Gengar, and it's horrifying. It is a horrid-looking thing.
It is in this fight, and I looked at that for a second, and I'm like, that Gengar wins. I don't see this thing losing a fight against anything.
Again, yeah. If I look at it, I surrender.
It's like a poison cloud of ghost. Is what it is. It's so intense.
And its teeth are so big.
They go to get a coffee because Pikachu is addicted to coffee and talk about what they know of the case. And Pikachu is convinced that Harry isn't dead because he's not dead. And they were both supposed to have died in that car crash.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks that they can, backwards solve the case that Harry was on.
And it would lead them to Harry.
Yes. Harry or the person who supposedly killed them.
I need to clarify something real quick. So Harry is not part of the police.
I think he is.
He doesn't have an office.
And he was hired
to track down... I think he's...
Oh, is he not? Maybe he's not.
I thought... The first time I saw it, I thought he was just a cop. But in this second viewing, I was like, maybe he's just a private eye. He's just like a really clean private eye.
It kind of makes more sense if he is a private eye.
They should have made it more clear.
They should have made that more clear. Honestly, before you said it, before you asked the question, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I remember being irritated when I was watching this movie, because I was like, you don't hire a cop to find a Pokemon. But it would make a lot of sense if he actually was a private eye. I wish it had said PI on his door or something.
Yeah, in his apartment door or something.
Just like a basic private eye thing.
We meet the reporter before this, around this time. I feel terrible that I just watched this movie, but I didn't take any notes.
So what's great about her is she is introduced after her Psyduck, and the Psyduck watches Harry go through that door, and he looks over and he's like, why is this Psyduck watching me?
What does he say? He says, are you here to scare me or rob me?
So it just creeps behind the trash can or something. What I kind of like about her is she Lucy is I think her name, right?
Yes.
She believes that she is in a noir film. And she kind of is, so good on her for that. But she starts every conversation like she is the main character of a noir film.
One, she's in a different movie, and that's great.
Uh-huh.
But two, she is the protagonist of whatever movie she's in. And I love that for her. I like her character so much. And I think she provides a really good foil for Tim because unlike Tim, she knows exactly where she wants her life to go. And she is running after it. She's not waiting for the world to let her be a world-class reporter. She's just doing it.
Not doing it super well, or else she wouldn't be an intern.
Well, she's doing it pretty well.
She's doing it okay. She has hooked the idea of doing this story, and she wants to find out what this story is.
I love their interactions so much. I think they also, Catherine Newton and Justice Smith also have really good chemistry in this film. There's a thing that I think Justice Smith is really good at, which is he's really good at switching up his energy depending on whether he's responding to her or Pikachu. It's a thing that I think a lot of actors don't do. A lot of actors will do the thing. Like Tom Holland, who's a great Peter Parker, is kind of the same mumblecore teen regardless of what he's doing. And that's fine. It works perfectly well for his interpretation of the character. But it's always nice to see an actor who can do that subtle energy change of I'm excited to talk to this person. I am not excited to talk to this person.
Right.
And he does it again at the midpoint of the movie when they go back to Detective Watanabe's office. That's not his name. The man's name is Ken Watanabe. I don't know his. He's not a detective in real life.
But that, for some reason, I don't even follow this actor, but that's what I think of him as. Detective Watanabe.
Detective Watanabe. Detective Yoshida. I don't want to obsess over Justice Smith's performance. It is really good. And because he is the main character in a movie that is primarily him interacting with CGI elements, it is just so impressive. And I will stop talking about it after this, but I just have to really hammer that point home.
So what happens next?
So they decide that they're going to go talk to Lucy at her job.
This is when we see the thing that I was kicking myself. When I watched the movie the first time, I started kicking myself. I was like, you idiot. You know Pokemon lore. You know when regular Ditto can't turn into a human, and you ignored that. that.
You ignored that happens. It just happens in front of you.
It just happens right there. The Ditto turns into a human, and I know Ditto can't do that. That's like the restriction of Ditto. They can turn into anything else except a human.
His son even says, and nobody likes your Pokemon.
Nobody likes your Pokemon. He means this Pokemon that you made in a lab is creepy.
It's fucking creepy.
We don't like that. And I didn't even get it. I just thought, oh, hey, it's kind of nice that the disabled guy has a Pokemon that can push him around. It's a Ditto.
It's nice.
It's turned into a human.
And dummy. If that were true, he would have just had a Machamp.
Yeah, or a Chansey. I feel like Chansey's the big nurse
absolutely,
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Didn't even think of it. A fool.
The whole movie is filled with like little clues to let you know that spoiler alert, that Bill Nighy is the true villain. It's wild.
So I think, watching the movie, I think it's obvious that he is a villain.
Yeah.
I did not realize that he was the villain when I first watched it.
Yeah. You think of him, you expect him to be like Giovanni, right? Just like a guy in the shadows doing bad stuff.
But he's like way worse.
He's way worse.
For one thing, he's good at it, and Giovanni was never good at it.
No, I don't think Giovanni could have ever gotten as close to completing a villainous scheme as Clifford.
The big red dog? He could get away with anything. I'd forgive him. So they go down to like this news station, right? And the Cliffords are recording this promo for this huge parade they're gonna throw. Because it's like, I don't know, the anniversary of the founding of the city or something. Whatever.
Yeah.
And Tim goes to talk to Lucy right after Lucy gets shot down in a way that, again, this should have been a good clue that this guy wasn't actually a villain. She tries to talk to the CEO of her company about a news story that she has. And he says, you can't run a news story unless you, like, have evidence for it. Find evidence and we'll run your story. Which, one, that's, like, way nicer than he needed to be about it. Then he tells her that she's wearing bad clothes, and I was like, maybe he is a villain. But I think that was supposed to be a red herring moment. Yeah.
And it also, one other thing he does is when he talks to her, he pulls down his sunglasses so that he can look her in the eye. It's wild how much effort they put into this movie.
So, but after that, Tim and Lucy go to like talk about what they can do to actually research this crime.
And Lucy mentions that his dad had a source at the docks.
So they go down to the docks. This is a fun scene. It's also a scene that you can watch, I think, in its entirety on YouTube. It was like the scene that they used to promote this movie.
They knew what they had.
It turns out the informant is a Mr. Mime, which is one of the creepier Pokemon, and maybe like literally the second worst one.
I mean, I think it depends on what your definition of worst is.
I mean, maybe there are other bad Pokemon, but I don't think you can get worse than Jinx.
I think Jinx is the worst, for sure.
The worst, because Jinx is a weird racist caricature that honestly should just not exist. This Mr. Mime is a mime, and they have to figure out how to talk to it like it. So there's this whole fun scene where they have to like get into its head.
They have to mime an interrogation, and it's so much fun. Something that May pointed out is Pikachu is in this scene really bad at interpreting Mime's miming, which means that his dad was really bad.
Was probably but maybe Pikachu was good at it.
Yeah, and so May was telling me, do you think the reason Mr. Mime was not excited to see them was because he was trapped with them for hours while Detective Dad had to like really struggle to figure out what he was saying? Stop telling me I miss my son.
I do like that idea. Pikachu does keep on trying to turn Mr. Mime's clues into, like, personal revelations. So Mr. Mime tells him about this, like, underground Pokemon fighting club where they produce this R, where it's distributed.
Yeah, it's being distributed at this place.
So they go to this place, and the guy who I guess runs this Pokemon fighting ring is like very aggro about Pikachu being here because Pikachu electrocuted his his Charizard and messed up his coat. But Tim says they can have a rematch if he tells them where the R is coming from. So they go in for the rematch, and did we mention that Pikachu has amnesia? It's kind of important.
Yeah, so Detective Pikachu doesn't remember anything about what happened, doesn't remember whose Pikachu they are, or even who Harry Goodman is. They just had the name on the hat.
Yeah, all he knows is that he has a name in the hat, and he knows he's a detective. And for some reason, he can talk to Tim.
So one of the things that Pikachu doesn't remember how to do, though, is how to fight.
Any of his moves. This Pikachu can't even do, like, quick attack, probably. And meanwhile, this guy doses up
He roids up his Charizard.
With this R, which of course makes the Charizard go crazy.
Bananas.
And this is a really fun fight scene, partially because at one point, Tim has to, like, run in there and, like, he steps on the Charizard's tail.
Attempted murder.
Which is, yeah, if you put out that fire, he could die or will die. Like a Charizard is it's like a salamander. It's like based on legendary salamanders who are connected to a particular fire, and if the fire goes out, they die. And that fire is on his tail. So he like stomps on it to get to not eat Pikachu. So there's like this fight where it's Tim and Pikachu versus a giant fire-breathing lizard.
And the proprietor of this establishment, who love this guy, by the way, this guy isn't anybody. I think he's like a radio host from Mexico.
Really?
I don't know how he got this gig.
He's really hamming it up. Like, he is
having the best time.
He gets in there to try to get Tim off of his Charizard. They fight, and then he accidentally breaks, like, all the vials of E in his...
I love his reaction to the vials breaking is not to be like, no, the vials. It's to open up his coat and be like, no!
It's great. It's
so
great.
funny.
And it's spewing everywhere in all the Pokemon. And there are a lot of Pokemon. This is an underground battle ring. All the Pokemon are going crazy.
Including the subwoofer Pokemon, which was really cool for the soundtrack. There was diegetic sound in this scene, which I always love it when a movie soundtrack is diegetic.
It was great. And this scene ends with Pikachu grabbing a Magikarp and throwing it at the Charizard because he knows the Magikarp can evolve into Gyarados and that Gyarados can take out this Charizard. And the Magikarp just flops around. And then the, like, purple light fades from the Charizard's eyes and he's normal again. And then the Magikarp evolves. Perfect. That is, like, perfect comedic timing. I love it.
I also love that the Magikarp doesn't go crazy because it's in a fish tank and it can't breathe the air.
And so it just turns into a Gyarados, and the Gyarados is just mad about being thrown around.
Gyarados traditionally angry at existing.
The world knows what it did.
So they get arrested, and Detective Yoshida is like, this is not how I wanted tonight to go for you. What's going on? Tim tries to explain everything to him, and he's like, listen, your dad's dead. Maybe his Pikachu's alive, sure. But I'm going to show you raw, uncut footage of your dad dying, which I just have loaded up right here because I just love watching it.
Hey, do not kink shame him.
I think Yoshida's projecting a little bit onto Tim. I think he really misses Harry.
Yeah. There is something that I think this turn is important to, like, have the moment of, no, he's dead. I feel like it is a little too soon that they go into, actually, he's alive, but also I understand that you can't keep somebody on a hook that long, you know?
No. The movie has already done so much. Up until this point, anytime we have a flashback, we don't get to see his dad's face at all. It's to preserve the twist, right? And like...
Right. That happens until almost the end of the movie, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the end of the movie. I don't think we ever see him straight on.
No, not until the very end. And I want to take a moment here. I'm going to speak directly to anybody who put out a YouTube video that was talking about how dumb this twist was and how dumb it was that they tried to keep it a secret. I'm sorry that you're too stupid to understand that this is a movie made for children.
What's wrong with this twist? It's a solid twist.
It's a solid twist. It's a good twist. It's
There's one aspect of the twist that doesn't make sense. But the twist itself is fine.
The twist itself is solid, and if you figured it out, like, yeah, you're like, it's not a hard twist to figure out.
No.
But if you're a kid, your mind, especially because of how they do the reveal, is like, oh my god, that's his dad. Yeah, and I saw so many like grown ass men like mad that this twist was such a secret, and it's like, get over yourself. Like, you're not special. Like, twists, a good twist is a twist that can be pieced together with clues, coherent to the narrative, and yet when it is revealed, you're still in awe of the work.
To me, the important part of a twist is that it's satisfying, that it makes sense to the world you've created.
Prestige.
And I'm going to say this as the co-host of a podcast where we talk about movies. Grown men have the worst opinions.
It's true.
I try very hard to not be like the other people doing this.
No, I do too, because you have to remind yourself, especially when you're watching a movie that's made for children. Not that children are like dumb or anything, but it's a fundamentally different audience. It's an audience that is still growing and learning and, figuring out their place in the world. And this movie's great. It's a good one. I think there's a culture in the world today to just find things to be mad about for the sake of being mad about them. And I just think it's a bad way to approach anything. What are you yelling about? Oh my god.
So after they watch this movie that's like, wow, your dad's dead, they get picked up in a car that Pikachu's like, that's an evil car.
That is an evil car.
That is an evil car. They get picked up and brought to the Elder Clifford, who has statues of the 3 Pokemon gods.
Which should be a dead giveaway.
Okay, here's the problem with the statues of 3 Pokemon gods. Can I say it? I'm going to say it. Pikachu says later in this scene, if Mewtwo is made from Mew, he must be the most powerful Pokemon ever. While sitting under statues of 3 gods who are also Pokemon.
Okay, but in the fiction, right, nobody knows if these Pokemon actually exist.
Unless they do. I literally don't know.
Yeah, unless... I mean, in the fiction of the games and the movies that I've seen, all of the god-tier Pokemon, including Mew, they're all theoretical.
Well, they call them legendary, right?
Yeah.
They are a legend.
Which means, like Sasquatch, they might not exist. I'm going to take an aside here to just... I don't believe in Sasquatch.
So, yes, but... as soon as they're like, Harry's dead, they get this new video. It's actually like a 3D projection. This feels more like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Thing than a Pokemon thing, but it's fine. I'll roll with it. That shows the car crash and Harry crawling out of it. And it shows Mewtwo abducting him like an alien.
Yeah, which, love it.
It's great. And so he's like, so you have to find Mewtwo now, because he knows where your dad is.
If anyone knows what happened to your dad, it's the Pokemon that maybe kidnapped him. I want to rewind a little bit to talk about 2 things. When Tim finds out his dad is dead, he has a moment with Pikachu. This is where the movie changes gears a little bit. This is him going through the actual grieving process, right? Like, up until this point, Tim has been running away from all of his problems.
He has been, for most of the movie, he's been active denial. Pikachu says, your dad's alive, and he's like, sure, yes.
Whatever. And so this is the point where he has to sit down and really accept it, and, like, my dad's dead, or he might really be dead. At the end of all of this, he kind of explains to Pikachu, like, his whole deal. He says at the end, I haven't been really nice to you. And that is such a young thing, like a thing that young people do. Just like, oh, and also in this moment, I'm realizing that I've been kind of a dick because I've been like dealing with my shit and I want to apologize for that. And like, it's nice to see somebody go through the whole grieving process in a movie. And yeah, it does kind of feel shitty that they are immediately like, no, your dad's alive and now you need to go find him again.
I can kind of, in my mind, compare this to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which also, almost out of nowhere, had like a genuine grieving moment before it had to go back to being like an action movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if kids' movies are getting better with that, or if all movies are getting better with that, but it feels like there are a few in recent memory that will like give you that moment of catharsis before you have to move on.
I think Into the Spider-Verse definitely one. It does it a lot better because...
Oh, that one hits it way harder and hits it very well. This one, there's literally like one conversation before.
Literally the next scene.
Yes.
But also, Into the Spider-Verse has the grieving moment is set aside, but it culminates, right? We come back to it. And at the climax in a way that is really powerful, right? Like, grief doesn't make Miles weaker; it makes him stronger. It makes him it fulfills him in a way, right? Like, it helps him realize who he wants to become. And God, that scene makes me cry every time I watch it. This movie, it is instead used as a kind of a handoff moment, because this is the moment where Tim stops being the main character. Right? He has learned the lesson he needs to learn. He's learned to run at the world instead of away from it. And now Pikachu's the main character. Because
Pikachu has not learned the meaning of his existence at all. Why is he here?
So, time to go find Mewtwo.
So I guess they pile into Lucy's tiny car.
Love this car. Love this scene. Pikachu points out constantly that, like, Psyducks are walking nuclear explosions waiting to happen.
So, they are listening to spa music in this car so that Psyduck does not get stressed, because if he gets stressed, he'll get a headache, and he'll basically, like, shoot psychic waves everywhere. And nobody wants that. And Psyduck is, like, using this as an excuse to get, like, foot rubs from Pikachu.
You don't hear Psyduck's end of the conversation, but at one point, Pikachu does say, "Of course I care about the kid. What are you talking about?"
And when they talk about how there's, like, a disgraced Pokemon psychologist working at this lab, Pikachu's like, "Oh, well, maybe she can find out the long-term effects of sitting in a baby seat next to a bomb." It's great. The whole thing's solid.
That disgraced scientist is probably the one hard death count of the movie.
Oh, I cannot imagine.
There are other scientists in that room. I have to imagine that they're all okay to bad.
They weren't in front.
Yeah, they weren't in front, though.
Most of the energy went straight forward, it seemed like.
Also, Mewtwo's opening line, like the first thing he says to Pikachu after he escapes is, "Humanity is evil," which makes me think that he probably didn't try to save her.
He probably didn't try very hard, although it turns out that was an edited version of what he said.
Yeah, it still is what he said.
He said, "I used to think all of humanity was evil," or something. Like, something slightly less terrible. So, they sneak into this lab. Lucy has brought bolt cutters and is just going right in. Nobody is thinking about the fact that there are definitely cameras. It's not even like, oh, they're an evil company, they have cameras. They're just like a company and they have cameras, you know? They have something to protect in there.
The younger Clifford we see is spying on them through the camera system. And as they're exploring the facility, they play a recording, a raw, uncut recording of Mewtwo escaping and the scientist dying. And this is our second clue as to who the real villain is, because this recording is made using his, like, weird, like, holo technology.
Yes, with the holographic technology. See, at this point, I still thought, oh, they're both villains. Like, they're obviously working together on this. But me, a fool, did not put it together. This twist must be satisfying because I'm still mad about it.
When I think the first time I watched this movie, instantly I was like, okay, so Bill Nighy is the villain. If you have Bill Nighy in your movie and some other British guy, Bill Nighy is your villain, just by law of associative actors.
The big issue is if an actor is too big, then they're the villain.
That is true.
That's a real problem with twist villains. You see it in everything. Because you don't want to get, like, a lame actor to be your villain. But if the twist is important to the story, you should get a nobody if you can.
It's a tough line to draw, and I think the correct answer, right, is they should have tried to get, like, another big famous British actor to be his son, you know, like a Tom Hiddleston, to just really throw him on me off the set.
Yes. The issue there is that, like, you probably don't want to pay that person that much. You don't want to be paying for two villains. Anyway, so they're in this facility. While Tim is watching this, Lucy is taking pictures of the rest of their facility, which includes the creepiest looking Greninjas, which are like a ninja frog Pokemon.
Yeah, and their scarves are their tongues.
That's weird. But also they're just very off-putting in and of themselves. They're like tree frogs, so they can like cling to stuff.
They do look creepy, but they also look like, because you see one earlier in the film, there's one in that market. And I do think they managed to like draw the line of like, this is a cool looking Pokemon, but it also looks menacing, right? Mm-hmm. We see other like amphibious Pokemon, and they still manage to make them look cute, like the Newt, whose name escapes me, that's in the apartment.
Oh, the Trico.
Yeah, thank you, Trico.
Yeah, no, he's pretty cute. We're about to get to the cutest Pokemon. It'll actually be a little while, but damn, he's adorable. These Greninja, they've all been experimented on to be like faster and stronger than normal. And like all of these Pokemon are being genetically engineered somehow. So Lucy gets attacked by them.
Yeah, I think at one point Lucy mentions like it feels like they're trying to improve on their evolutions. Which is like I love, because it's a sentence that doesn't make sense.
No.
Unless you know what Pokemon is.
I mean, I guess, you know, the creation of modern sheep was improving on evolution. Does that count?
I would love to just pick up like an ear of corn and be like, it's like they're trying to improve on their evolutions.
Yeah, exactly. So she gets attacked. Tim and Pikachu get attacked. They like all get attacked. It's less of a fight scene and more of a chase scene.
Very few fight scenes in this movie. Most of them are chases, I think. Very Indiana Jones. They
run through the door to the Torterra garden while these things are chasing them. They manage to escape them by having Psyduck do this weird exploding mine thing.
Which wakes up the Torterra.
Disturbs the Torterra, which are the size of mountains. Now, here's the only thing, is somebody would have known this was going on. Those mountains would have had to have, like, shown up overnight.
If I went to bed and I woke up and there was a new mountain, I would fucking notice. Like,
there's a forest out there.
I do love this scene, though.
There's this great action scene which feels terrifying. Like,
and gorgeous.
The world is, like, crumbling apart and falling upon them. And it is so great to look at. It goes on for a while, but I don't hate it. It doesn't outlast its welcome.
Also, it's one of the few moments in the movie where I was like, you could only do a shot like this in this Pokemon movie, right? Like, of just like seeing the Torterra like all like go back to sleep and like readjust themselves and just become the landscape again was so nice. It's so pretty and like
it was gorgeous.
Interesting.
During this scene, Pikachu has gotten hurt.
Yeah, Pikachu gets sniped by God.
Yeah, it was very weird. He gets like hit by a rock and he's like dying, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Pikachu isn't exactly a strong Pokemon.
He just doesn't look that hurt, is the thing. So they ask a Bulbasaur for help, and I need to pause for a second because I gotta say it. This Bulbasaur is the most adorable creature in this movie. I don't know why. I feel like every other Pokemon looks a little bit weird, and for some reason, these things just look
absolutely gorgeous, like adorable. They are the cutest little fucking things. Of the three OG starter Pokemon, and we get to see all three of them, right? Like, Bulbasaur looks so different from his original design, and yet, like, he doesn't come out with that like slight tinge of little gremlin energy that all the other Pokemon have, and I don't know how they did it.
I don't know either. And there's this weird, beautiful, like very peaceful walk where they are leading him to a Pokemon who can heal Pikachu. And it is so strange because, like, this movie has been, one, very action-based, and then two, kind of, like, crazy, or even at parts, like, ugly, like, on purpose, right? Like, it's looked very weird. And just right here, it's like, this part's just kind of nice. And the great lead-up is that then they lead him to Mewtwo, who looks like he came out of Alien.
I'm glad that they leaned into his... Just all of him is so fleshy in ways that you don't want him to be.
He has such, like, an intense otherness. So I feel like Mew, the design is kind of cat-like, and so you could have some of that in there, but it does not come across as cat-like. It just looks like, he kind of looks like Voldemort. Like, he doesn't have a nose. He just looks, and his eyes are so big, and he's so angular.
The bones on his chest are yeah, they're so, like, they're jutting out in ways that are, like, feel uncomfortable to look at.
What I love about Mewtwo in this is that he is not just the bad guy like he was in the last movie. However, when you look at him, you still kind of assume that he is, because he's scary. You
find out that Mewtwo specifically told Pikachu to bring him the boy.
Right.
Bring me the boy. But then he gets captured by the younger Clifford, who just kind of looks at everyone evilly as he does it, like,
Oh, so mad. So mad. He doesn't speak.
He's just kind of smirking, like, just looking evil.
How did I let them get away with this? He doesn't say words.
Pikachu is shaken by this, and Pikachu is like, I've seen movies. I know what happens now. You found out that I've betrayed you, and now you have to be mad at me. And Tim's like, what are you talking about?
I think he's a little upset at the idea that he also maybe got Harry killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Tim's like, you didn't get Harry killed. He's like, that's not what happened. That can't be what happened. Like, he believes in Pikachu. But Pikachu's an amnesiac. He doesn't believe in himself.
He doesn't know that he's not a backstabbing creature, right?
Right.
He doesn't remember. So Pikachu needs some alone time, shocks Tim in the process, and Tim's like, well, all right, well, he's dealing with some stuff, but we gotta go tell Elder Clifford what happened here.
Yeah, that's the smart move.
As soon as he gets there, Bill Nighy has gone full Green Goblin mode. Doesn't even wait.
He does have some big Green Goblin energy, actually. He's got a son that he doesn't like. He really wants to kill Spider-Man.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird when he throws Tim across the room and he's like, how dare you, Spider-Man? We could rule the city together, you and I.
That's not what happens.
No, but he does put his brain into Mewtwo's body.
Yeah, he does.
This was the point in the theater where I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. This is not what I was expecting. So
while we were watching this, Jamie went and checked the rating for this movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Its rating is not that good, which I thought was crazy. And she even saw a review that said that it did not take its premise to, like, absurd enough points. And I was like, this old man just uploaded his brain into an alien. Like, what more do you need? This is it.
And he's not even done. This is step one of his 2-step plan.
Yes. He believes that the way to save the human race is to make them... Because, sorry, we didn't get into this. He has a terminal disease.
He's wheelchair bound.
And whatever it is, it's pretty slow moving, so I guess he's all right for now. He has a terminal disease, and he has become obsessed with the idea that humans cannot evolve, but Pokemon can. And Pokemon can evolve into the best versions of themselves. And so, he's like, I'm gonna take humans and merge them into Pokemon, because I can do that now, because that's a thing Mewtwo can do. And if you are an active viewer at this point, and maybe you're older than, like, 12, you figure out the twist with Pikachu. Good for you, I'm happy for you, but you don't need to be mad about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It was wild to me that had happened.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing, right? And that's it. That's the whole plan, right? There's no. It's so crazy.
I mean, he built the city to like live side by side with Pokemon, but he actually built the city just so that he could fuse everyone in it with a Pokemon. So everybody would have a Pokemon partner, or there would be a wild Pokemon near anybody, so he could just blast them. By the way, that's also what this R is for. It makes it so that the Pokemon are crazy, and they can't, like, fight off this mind meld.
And then he does it. He just does it. And Lucy becomes a Psyduck. And Detective Yoshida becomes his Snubbull.
I gotta say, if I have one complaint with this movie, it is that these characters did not get to do anything after this, because that is the funniest shit. Like, I want this super serious detective to be the Snubbull for a while.
I was like, you know what would be great? One, they got Ken Watanabe to say Snubbull, which is great. I'm glad that they did that. You know, and they got I forget Lucy's actress's name again, but they got her to say Psyduck a bunch of times too for that, which is also great. But I would have loved to see the three of them, the two of them and Pikachu, work together to try and get to Tim a little bit more. That would have been fun.
Yeah, but it didn't really happen. Once they're Pokemon, I guess the idea is that they are too fucked up. This is too weird. They can't deal.
Yeah, they're going through a lot.
Yeah. So then we cut to Pikachu, who is singing the Pokemon theme song and crying to himself.
This is the funniest scene in the movie for me. It's so good.
He's like, Pokemon, can I catch you?
I think Ryan Reynolds is way too old.
Bam! Get dunked on, idiot.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan Reynolds, you're 50. You look great, though, for 50. You look really good.
Go on with what you were saying.
But yeah, he's a bit, I think he's a bit old to care about Pokemon at all, right? Like, I think...
Because he would have been an adult when Pokemon came out.
Yeah, he would have been an adult already. I think the oldest I think anyone could be and have grown up with Pokemon is maybe 40. And that's like it came out when you were a teenager and you stuck with it, right?
Right, like you had a Game Boy in college or something.
No shame, no judging, right? It's a generational thing. I don't know how much of a fan Ryan Reynolds was prior to this movie. I'm glad he put his everything into it, though, right? You appreciate that?
It feels really good, actually.
It's a thing about these video game movies that happens all the time where a lot of actors will just approach it as if it's just like a paycheck job, which is fine. It's your job to be an actor, right? But there's a level of like disinterest or ironic interest, I think, to a lot of them, or the movie just isn't that good.
Right. Sometimes you'll hear about an actor who's like, yeah, well, my kid really liked this, so he wanted me to be in it. So I decided to do it. And they, like, for some reason, those people are always playing, like, the wildest roles. And those are fun.
Yeah.
But, like, when you think about, like, the Marvel movies or something, I think that every actor, let's say most of them, I think that most of the actors who are, like, playing the Marvel superheroes are really excited to do that. And that's one of the reasons those movies feel good.
At first.
Sure, at first. Some of them maybe fell off. There's a part of me that thinks Chris Evans must still have been excited to do it. But, like, when the excitement isn't there, I feel like you can feel that, too. You're like, well, they no longer care, so I no longer care.
Especially when you're making something that is aimed at, like, a child audience or a teen audience. What you need is that earnestness. Because if you come at it with anything less...
We just watched Mewtwo Strikes Back, and there are parts of that where you're like, nobody cared when they were translating this movie, when they were like building up the lore. There's just bits that are phoned in, and it feels bad.
They didn't believe in it.
And that sucks. And the fact that in this movie, none of it feels phoned in. It feels like the world building is so on point. It feels like Ryan Reynolds gives a shit.
It's almost scary, right? Like, everybody involved in this project must have clearly loved Pokemon. And that's amazing. One, I just think that's amazing, right? I think everybody kind of likes Pokemon now, and that's awesome. But two, and this is a true story, So Bill Nighy, who plays the villain, who is like 80, had no idea what Pokemon was, took the role because he knew it was a thing his grandkids were into, and to prepare for the role, did a bunch of research. I don't know what that means.
This is exactly the kind of shit I was talking about. Although I am very curious about his research, because if he spent some time on Wikipedia, he would just be confused. But if he read all the manga, he would get a completely different idea than it is if he sat down and watched all the movies. or played the games.
Or if he watched the show or played the games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what his research entailed, but by the end of it, he had that he was enamored by it, and he bought plushes of his favorite Pokemon.
What's his favorite Pokemon?
And you feel, I don't know.
Damn. Okay.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm remembering interviews that he did 2 years ago, but you can go look this up. It's super funny. He genuinely loves that he was a part of this, and you feel it in his performance. He is having such a great time. You can't fake that energy. Also, it's just fun playing a villain, right? A villain who's turning people into Pokemon. Another energy, by the way, that Elder Clifford has, really good, really deep Kaiba energy.
Oh yeah, I mean he has this sort of I will tear down God and replace it with Pokemon. His favorite Pokemon is Mew, by the way, found it on Nerdist.com.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah.
The original Mew. That's really cool. That's so good. That's a good choice.
He just likes the idea of it being the first one, and it's so majestic and weird.
It's beautiful. God, I want to talk to him about Pokemon now. I want to know what he thinks. There are a lot of people, I think, who say, "Oh, I'm a lifelong learner." I don't believe you. Unless you're willing to engage with children's media on its terms.
That's the limit. Pikachu finds a Greninja star. He's like, Greninjas hacked the car. And Clifford would have been able to tell us that, which means Clifford's the bad guy. And so he's like, oh no, I gotta get back to Tim. He goes back to Tim. And Lucy's like, I'm a Psyduck now. And Pikachu's like, whoa, that's way bigger than my thing.
Oh yeah, he gets there and he's like, damn it, I missed the reveal. Now everybody knows he's the bad guy, but now he has to save Tim, who's being attacked by Clifford's secretary.
He's the only Pokemon that is functioning. Everybody else, maybe eventually they'll be able to figure out how to live like this, but it's not working. So it's up to him to stop Mewtwo.
So Tim is fighting Clifford's secretary. No, wait, he's fighting Clifford's son. But that's not possible. Clifford's son is in a closet. Then who is this?
I'm so mad about this. So it's just Ditto,
it's Ditto,
of course. And Ditto manages to be the most terrifying Pokemon in this movie, and retroactively maybe ever.
After this, I can imagine it now, right? Before in the Pokemon show when Ditto transformed but didn't change the eyes, I was like, that's cute. Now I'm like, that's horrifying, actually. I know what that looks like now on skin and fur.
It's rough. So this Ditto's fighting him as a human, and then it goes on long enough that Ditto starts fighting him as a Pokemon, which is worse. And it gets to the point where he's hanging off the edge of a building, and Ditto is turned to a Cubone, which sucks, because Ditto doesn't know about this interaction.
Yeah, Ditto doesn't know the baggage.
He could have picked any other Pokemon, but he starts smacking his hand with this little bone to get him to fall off
What a fucking sadistic little fuck, by the way, right?
I know. He could have turned to anything else and just pushed him over, but no.
He could have picked up a gun and shot him.
So then younger Clifford smacks him out the window with I don't even remember, a lamp or something.
He golf balls the shit out of him. And he does this yell, this animalistic yell when he does it. It's amazing. I was immediately won over by this actor. I was like, yeah, this guy's all right.
It's great because you have this moment where you're like, he fucking hates that Ditto. He's always hated that Ditto, and at some point it tied him up and put him in a closet.
And then the Ditto really follows it up, though.
Yeah. So the thing is, Ditto can turn into anything. So it turns into a fucking bird, and gets back in there and beats up Clifford and goes to take out Tim.
Again.
Meanwhile, Pikachu he's climbed up to the rooftops and is on these parade balloons, just like taunting and trying to fight evil Clifford Mewtwo. And this is great because the parade balloons are in the shape of Pokemon, but they're in the shape of the anime Pokemon.
Yeah, the classic illustrated forms.
And the toxic gas is coming out of the balloons, and the toxic gas is flammable, which means that every time that Pikachu electrocutes something, the balloon explodes into a ball of fire.
Love it. Hindenburg shit.
It is a really solid fight, and when you're watching it, you can buy that Pikachu is holding his own against Mewtwo.
It's a big problem in the anime, right? That like it makes no sense, but it's fine because it's a cartoon. And so the work that they put into this live action movie to like give Pikachu an environment to play in that plays to all of Pikachu's strengths and all of Mewtwo's weaknesses is fantastic. Like again, they didn't have to put that effort in.
Because Mewtwo, but here's the thing, Mewtwo does not have weaknesses. Now, technically, yes, he does have weaknesses because all Pokemon do, but the character Mewtwo is not shown to have any weaknesses. Clifford, though, is like a narcissist, right? And you can work with that. So he keeps underestimating this Pikachu, and this Pikachu is like exploding these balloons and doing this huge tackle because he doesn't even need to win. He just has to distract the Mewtwo so he can't kill Tim before he gets that thing off of Clifford's head and turns everything back, which he does do after he drugs Ditto. Does Ditto... Hey, I have a question. Does Ditto die?
No, I think...
Because it kind of looks like he's dying, but also he might just be super high and, like, chilled out right now.
Yeah, Ditto got so roided up that he could no longer focus on maintaining any form, including its own gelatinous mass.
Yeah, so he just turns into a pile of goop.
Just a stain on the floor.
And then Tim pulls the thing off of Clifford's head. The one issue I would say I have with this is it's not ever said that Mewtwo couldn't fuse somebody with himself. Maybe he can't. But if he could, Clifford should have done that first.
I would have at least tried, right?
Right. Giving it a shot.
So that this specifically doesn't happen. But it's fine. Clifford is defeated. Mewtwo separates all of the people from the Pokemon. And then is like, now there is one more Pokemon who I must separate from their human self. Oh, who could it be? Who's he talking about?
Here's the problem with this twist. There is a problem with it. It is not explained for what reason Mewtwo would need Tim.
I think the implication is that Harry was so hurt that if they separated him from Pikachu just raw style, that's not what I want to say.
That was weird, but keep going.
He would just go back to dying from the car explosion.
So it's like a DNA thing, you think?
Yeah, he needed coherent DNA to be able to use to heal him, I guess.
Maybe, but that's not said.
It's not said.
There's a version that I was thinking about that I don't hate, which is there's no reason why he couldn't have separated him earlier, except that Mewtwo can see the future. I was probably like, I'm gonna need your son to make it so that I'm not mind controlled. Like, that would have been interesting. I'm thinking about it. I would love if this whole thing had been planned by Mewtwo.
Oh, Mewtwo gets captured immediately. My alternative, I think another great alternative would be if Mewtwo was just like, man, this guy has a lot of hangups. While I'm transferring this guy's soul into this Pokemon, he's got a lot of hangups about his son. And I think we could really drill down and solve those issues if they go on a fun adventure together.
Do you think that Mewtwo absorbed the Pokemon psychologist?
I just think it's going to bring them closer as family.
Maybe the Pokemon psychologist isn't dead. She was just brought into Mewtwo's mind. Mewtwo's like, okay, yeah. I got this.
This is easy. Baby shit. Reconciling a father with their son? Baby stuff. All I need to do is put the father's soul into the Pikachu's body, give them amnesia.
I reconciled with my father. It wasn't even hard. We just almost destroyed the world.
That's how you do it.
Mewtwo fixes everything. Mewtwo leaves. And then we get a sort of cool-down scene where we finally get to see Ryan Reynolds as a human. Because Ryan Reynolds is Tim's dad.
The reveal for it is very cute, by the way.
It shows Pikachu from the back.
Yeah, and then he says, "Hey, kid," and then he steps out. It's just, again, just to really hammer home to the kids in the audience what's happening. But in a way that's not like, it's not treating you as if you're stupid. It's just like, this is the last hint you're gonna get. It's cute. It's a cute touch.
So Tim decides to stay with his dad. He's gonna maybe be a detective. End of movie. There is a pretty good credit sequence.
Oh, the credit sequence is so good. I think Ryan Reynolds mentions that his grandma is waiting for him at home, actually.
Does he?
He says, like, say hi to your grandma for me.
Well, then it seems weird that Tim doesn't go home, at least to say bye. It just seems like they might have to move grandma out eventually.
Oh, yeah, just move grandma into your little 2-bedroom apartment.
Well,
hell yeah.
What support system does she have?
I think we can both safely say that we like this movie and we think everyone should watch it. Is that correct? Or are you going to hit me with a twist?
Jen, I'll tell you what I wanted as I was watching this movie. I thought to myself, everybody knows what Pokemon is now. And yet I still want to watch this with somebody who has no idea what Pokemon is. I want to sit down with like a 50-year-old who like maybe their kids are into Pokemon, but they don't really know. And I just want to be like, so what do you think of this?
Tell me, what's up?
Yeah, what's up? Because the last movie we watched did not care if you did not know anything about Pokemon. It was taking for granted that you knew what it was talking about. And this movie really held your hand for like the first 20 minutes in a way that wasn't even like obnoxious. It just like worked because they were going by different rules than what we were used to anyway. So we need to see it.
I think part of it is just being willing to... I hate using this terminology. I think it's a disgusting way to talk about art, but I think part of it is that a lot of times when you're dealing with video game IPs, there's a struggle to let them breathe and let them just be the stupid thing that they are and be okay with it. I think part of the reason why Detective Pikachu and Sonic also work is because they're allowed to be what they are. I don't think Sonic is nearly as good as this movie, but I think it has all of the same strengths. I just think that too many times people come to these like video game or children's IPs and they don't respect them, right? They don't respect that these are things that became popular for a reason. It doesn't need to be art. It just needs to be fun. And maybe along the way you can find something in there that's artful.
Yeah. And like we were saying, it feels like everybody gave a shit about this movie. That's the thing that feels strange about it, honestly. It has much less like Marvel movie energy than it has like indie movie energy sometimes.
Yeah. Or Cats energy.
It feels like a lot of caring about this movie.
I firmly believe that everybody involved with the production of Detective Pikachu believed that it was going to be a great thing. And they were right. I want to play a game with you, Tony. This movie was directed by Rob Letterman. Do you know what else Rob Letterman has directed?
No, I don't. This is going to be a trip, huh? We usually do this at the top.
He doesn't have a large... I like having it here at the end. He doesn't have a large oeuvre. But the first thing he directed was a CGI short in 1999. His first feature-length film, co-directed with Vicky Jensen and Bebo Bergeron, and it was in 2004, a little movie called Shark Tale.
Huh.
His next movie, co-directed with Conrad Vernon, was a 2009 movie called Monsters vs. Aliens. So
he went ahead and he directed maybe the two genuinely worst DreamWorks films. Like, I don't even think there's competition for that title after you've gotten past Shark Tale and Monsters vs. Aliens. Nobody liked those movies.
Well, let me tell you what. In 2010, he had his live-action debut with the live-action comedy loosely based off of the 1726 novel of the same name starring Jack Black, Gulliver's Travels.
Now, the novel starred Jack Black?
Yes, the novel starred Jack Black. He wasn't in the movie at all.
I don't know if Gulliver's Travels was a good movie. I know that it wasn't Gulliver's Travels, but also I don't feel like you need it to be. Gulliver's Travels is it's a parody of the time, which means that you would have to change things anyway. But I don't know if it was bad.
I've seen it. It's not good.
Oh, well.
I can tell you, I watched it on DVD, rented it from Movie Gallery. Not great.
Wow, there are people in Gulliver's Travels. Did you know that? There are I know it's Jack Black, but there are a lot of other people in this movie. Sorry, go on.
Emily Blunt, Catherine Tate. Wow. So he took a break for 5 years and came back with another Jack Black starring movie, Goosebumps.
Now, I want to be fair here because I've never seen Goosebumps. So maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Goosebumps is probably kind of the energy you want from the director who directs Detective Pikachu. Because I feel like it has the same strength of, looking at this IP and saying, this is silly, but can we make it strong on its own? Can we have a way for this silly thing to be entertaining to a new audience?
I know a lot of people who really liked the Goosebumps movie. I think this is the movie that puts him on the list. I know a lot of people, when this movie came out, who went and watched it because they grew up reading Goosebumps and didn't expect it to be anything, and were pleasantly surprised to find a movie that just kind of made them feel like kids again, and also reminded them of the old TV show, but still managed to be its own fun new thing. Also, the premise of the movie itself is really dumb. It's R.L. Stine, played by Jack Black, is a real person who trapped all the monsters in the books.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
It's good. It's good stuff.
I like the idea that this children's horror writer is haunted and constantly writing new books because it's the only way to get the evil cuckoo clock away. Yeah,
it gives me. You remember that? That Brothers Grimm movie.
Oh my god! Yeah. Boy, I'm surprised we haven't done that one yet. Actually,
it's like that, but fun. But fun and for kids. I hope we never do. It's got Heath Ledger in it, but God, I don't want to watch that. I think it's Heath Ledger and Matt Damon or something ridiculous like that. And then he did Detective Pikachu. And I don't think he's directed anything since. Yeah, it's a wild start, I think, to...
That was... How many movies was that? If we don't count the shorts, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, 2 out of 5.
And these are all very special effects. All of his live action stuff is very special effects heavy. And the two animated films are entirely... They're all long-term projects for a director.
And maybe that's why he's good at directing.
I definitely think so, because he has experience with CGI as an animator. Absolutely. Because the guy who directed Bumblebee was the guy who directed Kubo and the Two Strings. And it shows because that he's an animator because of how he treats the CGI characters.
I'm looking at stills of Monsters vs. Aliens. Boy, this looks bad. Hugh Laurie was in it.
Oh, yeah. Seth Rogen, Will Arnett, Kiefer Sutherland, Rainn Wilson, Paul Rudd, Stephen Colbert as the president. This was a stacked... They really thought this movie was going to be something.
Well, that's the thing, though. These are people who should be able to, do a movie. Although Hugh Laurie's been in some bullshit before, so,
Hugh Laurie has been in a lot of bad stuff.
Anywho, we gotta start wrapping up. I'm hot in here. Thank you for listening to Direct-to-Video. VHS? I have been your host, Tony Robusto.
I have been your host, Andy Reyes.
Are you lagging, or are you just being an ass?
I'm lagging.
I hope so, because that was so long between that. You can find me at TheaterBats or my website at inspiredbytrueevents.org.
And you can find me on Twitter at royalty_valens. You can also find me on my other podcast, Time Honored Pictures, where we just watched Gone with the Wind, and let me tell you, it was 4 hours long.
I knew there was a reason I hadn't watched Gone with the Wind.
Well, you're about to get a lot more.
You can find the podcast at directto.video. We have a comment system that you can leave comments on there, or you can just leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Can you do Spotify? Get your podcast there? I don't know. Thank you to Lee Rosevere for Planet E off the album Travis One. And next time we're going to watch Lightyear, so we'll be able to watch a new movie for the second time ever, I think. I am the ghost of John Smith. Hold up. You say newer. The newer Star Wars stuff is better with it. The prequels specifically were very good at it.
All right. I guess specifically I'm talking about like the kind of sequel trilogy. Because the prequel trilogy like has a surprisingly large amount of this. I've gone back and I rewatched episodes 2 and 3, and 2 is a miserable time. But like,
look, I watched 2 after watching episode 1, and 2 was way better than 1. So everybody needs to get off of 2's back for a second.
No, I disagree, dude. I think 2 is miserable. I had a horrible time. I preferred 1.
Half of 2 is Obi-Wan Kenobi flying around the stars, fighting bounty hunters. Stuff's fun.
Yeah, and the other half is miserable.
The other half is miserable. But nothing happens in episode 1.
And that's fine, right? Like, no, it's still, pod racing happens.
Andy, I swear to God, if any other human being ever says to me, what about the pod racing? I'm going to kill them. The scene is too long.
The pod racing scene is way too long. It shouldn't be in the movie.
It's too long and it's fucking nothing. And this Jedi just put a kid in a death sport.
But he knew he could do it. He believed in him.
It's a death sport. There were sand people shooting at the cars.
All right, but I don't know. Like, he was a child slave. How much worse can it get?
He could have just taken this child slave.
He could have just stolen them. He could have just stolen them.
Because what's important is it's not stealing if it's humans. That's just freeing, right? But he doesn't.
He doesn't. He respects property.
And I gotta cut this now. My issue is that Qui-Gon Jinn is just as bad in many ways as young Anakin Skywalker is in the second movie.
Yes.
But I'm supposed to fucking like Qui-Gon. Like, I'm supposed to, like, agree with his decisions, but every decision he makes is insane.
We could talk about this forever, and we can't. But also we can't.
Asshole.
He sucks so bad. And it's not the actor's fault. I think a lot of people really like bagged on this kid actor way too much. I think he did a fine job. He's just given shit things to say and do.
Do you know what I genuinely think it is? Is if you ever watch like a interview with Mark Hamill or like the older ones with Carrie Fisher,
yeah,
they will always talk about how the writing in Star Wars is terrible, and they were basically like, "I'm not going to say this. I'm going to say something that makes sense."
Mm-hmm.
But then, like 20 years later, when the '90s films came out, early 2000 films, I guess. George Lucas was like a huge name, and nobody was going to be like, George, I can't say this. So they just did it, especially these young actors who didn't know any better. It's a fascinating, disgusting mess. Yeah, those movies are bad.
I like them, but we can't get into this because we're here to talk about Pokemon.
Yes, please.
I will say, though, you can watch the making of documentaries for free on YouTube, and they are fascinating. It is fascinating.
There is so much I have to cut from this already.
What I was going to say, I'm just going to start my point from the top so you can just cut all that out.